she's not going to be here.
All right, Pam, we're recording, so please go ahead.
Thank you. It is March 13th. This is a regular meeting of the Community Resources Committee of the Town Council. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so via Zoom or by telephone. No in-person attendance of members of the public is possible, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. I see a quorum. We're going to go around and see if everybody can be heard. I'll start with Pat.
Yeah, present, and I can hear.
Pam is present. She can hear. Kathy.
Yes, here.
And Jennifer. We see her name. Jennifer, can you hear us?
She's on mute.
Well, she'll come in. I am going to, let's see if we have what we have for audience.
Oh, here, Chris is coming in.
Jennifer, can you hear us?
Chris is in the audience.
Pam, I'm seeing that. Chris, Athena, can you help bring Chris Brestrup in, please, as a panelist?
I'm trying, and it seems that she was, and then not. And it looks like we lost Jennifer. So maybe she was having audio issues. Hi, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Stephanie.
There she is. And hi, Stephanie. Yeah.
Hey, Chris.
I'm going to open up the meeting to public comments. That's the third agenda item. And I see one person in the audience, Liz Rodriguez. Would you be interested in making a public comment to this committee? Sure. We'll have 3 minutes.
I'm actually
Hi,
not.
Liz.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm actually not my wife. I'm actually Nick Shaw. It's our common account. Thank you, Pam. You mentioned, I did send some stuff along to you. I don't know if you were able to hand that to other folks. So I don't know if I need to share my screen and show the graph or not. Perhaps you all have it.
I shared what you had sent to me to the rest of the committee.
Okay. Is it useful for me to share the graph, or should I just go along and go ahead and speak to it?
Why don't you just describe what you're wanting to talk
Sure.
about?
So the concern I have is again, that we've elected to prohibit all cutting on designated core habitat land. And the concern I have there is that while the Shutesbury Road piece is technically on that kind of land, it's on the edge, it's on the margins, there are no endangered or threatened species there. And for me, the bigger issue too is that given our historic data for temperature, we've got rapidly increasing temperatures, and that actually impacts forests profoundly. Quite possibly in the next 10 years, even more than cutting a few trees down on the edge of the property. So what I did is I went and I gathered the historic temperature data for June, July, and August in a 5-year period back in 05 to 09 to then compare to our recent 5 years in 2024. And we've got a significant jump. You know, our average number of hot days in June in the previous period was only 6 days, where it was 85 or more. And now we're looking at, 9+ days. July, we've gone from 12 days up to 19 days. August, not so much, but that's not surprising because we're heading into the fall. It's gone from 10 to 11 days. And the reason I'm concerned about the 85-degree piece is that if we look at photosynthesis and the health of forests, which is vital to their growth, then we lose that growth when the temperatures start to climb above 85 degrees. The optimal temperatures for our kinds of plants in this area hover around 85, 86 degrees. And we're now seeing a lot of temperatures in the 90s and even going over hundreds pretty regularly. So What that means is that our forests, we might protect them on a map, but we are looking at a lot of stress to them physiologically. So we can have them on the biomap, the core designated areas. But on the other hand, if we're jacking up the temperature so high and we see another 40% increase in the next 10 years, compounded on the 40% increase we've already had, we're looking at temperatures that could potentially mean the entire month of July is out of the range for effective photosynthesis. And that is a point where plants are under such stress that they're open to massive insect infestation. There's drought that comes along with that. And there's other problems like blowdown from violent storms, and they just can't take care of themselves. And they can't grow to the point where they can have what they need to put out leaves the next spring. And they can't do that for very long and remain a healthy, viable forest. So I guess my bottom line is here is that, we're at a point in our society where we don't have any great solutions anymore because we've kind of kicked the can down the road a lot, despite the fact that we in Amherst, I think, have done a lot better than other folks. And so I do think that there's truth when I say that we might have to sacrifice a few pieces of our forests here and there for the greater good of preserving the entire forest and the mission of trying to draw our carbon down. As I said in my last comment a few weeks ago, that if we cut a few trees and we put up some solar panels, we're going to get a much better exchange rate for keeping carbon out of the atmosphere than if we just leave the trees there in place.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate. And I think everybody raise your hand if you remember getting that memo from Nick that I sent. Yeah, so people have gotten that, and we will take a close look at that. Yeah.
It might
Appreciate
be
it.
helpful, Pam, I don't know if we
Yes.
can do it if we had a clock, because I'm not sure he understood.
I
he
I
was
don't
cut
I
off.
don't yeah, I
Yeah.
don't have I was watching on my watch.
Oh, yeah, no,
Um,
I'm not, you didn't do anything wrong. I'm just wondering if because I felt like he didn't have a sense. So
You know,
maybe,
if you
a
want me
verbal
to next
warning.
time, I can stop my stopwatch and
That would be
announce
fine.
when there's 30 seconds left. Pat,
Yeah,
That'd be
just
great.
something
Yeah,
like
you know,
that,
that's
because
great.
it felt
just something
awkward.
like a fair warning, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, appreciate it.
no
Thank
shame,
you.
no blame, just trying to.
Yes,
see-
yeah. Thank you, Nick, because I know you're still listening. Appreciate it. Let's move into the action items itself then, and this is an ongoing discussion. The basis will be the zoning bylaw version 10 that we worked on from February 27th. And it is in both a clean and marked up version in our packets. And Stephanie, did you get my message that it would be really wonderful to have help with editing as we go?
Yes, I did, and I think I responded, but I will share my screen now. And I'm using the marked up version.
Good.
I'm not as adept at sort of switching back and forth as Mandy Jo is, so that's the one we'll have to go with.
That's fine.
Can I get a-
Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
I'm sorry, clarification, because I assumed I had the most recent version, which was 9. And then I went in the packet and noticed, oh, it's 10, and I had printed
Yeah.
out. So is there a big difference? I don't, because
There
Mandy
is-
had brought up, had edited 9.
She edited on top of 9 and sent us the version 10, so that's what went in.
Oh,
in
okay,
the
then
packet.
maybe I do have that. Okay.
So
I'm
the
sorry.
only changes from last time, there are no changes from like 17.05 onward, or
Okay.
toward the end.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
I need to put this on a different screen because I can't see that.
I,
Okay, and
The other-
let's
the only
before
other
action-
comment I wanted to make is, I absolutely agree, Stephanie, work up the markup, because it wasn't clear to me all the things that have been marked up have been accepted. I know we've been systematically working through the Chris one, so I think keeping this is great until I will greatly appreciate a clean version when we can get to one where we're not accepting things that are still in debate. And I'm
Yep.
doing my best to try to read a version that has almost every line marked up.
I know, it's really awkward.
But I
Um,
think the sooner we can get to something that we call cleanish, then we can start with less markup. So I'm
Mhm.
ready.
Okay, I just want to take one quick tangent, and that is in terms of timing, I'm aiming for wrapping up our conversation on this topic around an hour and a half in, so it would be around 5:30. And then I want to switch to just wrapping up the ZBA and planning board bulletin announcements and so forth. So at that point, Athena's can be off the hook. She needs to be back at another meeting by 6 on the dot. And I want to give her plenty of time to transition.
Then,
Okay,
then Pam, you need to have her make you co-host because if she leaves, we lose everything. So
No,
just,
it's actually that the charter review committee is meeting at 6, and so I need it, this committee has a hard stop so that I can start that meeting because I'm doing both on my account and I can't run
Yeah,
two on
but
my
if you-
account.
right. But if you would make me co-host, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll do that, but I still need the committee to stop at 6.
Yeah,
Please.
yes.
Thank you.
Jennifer,
you're muted.
you need to. You're still muted
I know,
somehow.
I'm very
There you
sorry.
go.
I am not able, I can see you on Zoom, but you can't see me or hear me.
Recording in progress.
And I'm just,
We can see and hear you.
okay, but not on my screen. So what I am wondering is if, I'm sorry, it's saying open system settings, and I don't know what that means.
Well-
You are visible to me. You're not like a full screen picture, but you are.
I'm visible on my, I'm on my phone. I can't seem
Oh.
to get in
You're-
from my
you're com-
laptop.
So Jennifer, you're completely visible, including your hand is up. You know, in other words, where anytime you want to talk, we're going to hear you
And see you.
and see you.
Oh, okay.
And-
It's not,
and see the
okay, so I'm
raised
gonna get
hand.
off my phone. No, you're
Well-
not,
Can you see the markup version on the screen?
yes. So I'll
Then-
just,
then I think
okay,
we're
you know
good.
what I have to do? I have to tune in on my phone, but I'll watch the screen. I'm sorry, go back to the meeting.
No,
So it sounds like you might have two microphones on, Jennifer, and probably you should shut one of them off.
Yes,
Is it-
it's on my laptop, the mic is frozen. That's the problem.
This is better now.
Okay.
When you talk now, it's better.
Okay.
And one more thing, can we make this a little larger?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm old. I'm
Is that a-
officially 79.
Woo! Congratulations. Oh, much better. Even a tiny bit more if it's possible. Oh, yeah, that's getting
Oh,
there.
wonderful.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so folks, we left off with the discussion of number 26, and we are now on number 27, stormwater management, which I believe, if I can interject here, is I believe that we moved or I recommended that it move to number 2. But we just started the conversation about what is the difference between a stormwater management plan and and stormwater management. What's number 2?
Number 2 is site plan. So that would include swales and detention basins and things like that.
Right.
But I think a stormwater management plan is actually a narrative with calculations enclosed. So it's different from the plan that shows the basins and the swales and catch basins and things.
So it sounds like we should keep this.
I think you should.
Okay. And I also want to note that Mandy Jo, as she is not able to be here, sent me an extensive list of notes discussing this. And she had no comment on number 27. Number 28. Complete list of chemicals, fuels, other hazardous materials to be used in both construction and operation phase and decommissioning phase. Anybody want to speak to that? I'll take a stab at it. When we think about, I'm just referring actually to a Conservation Commission site visit that I was able to attend. And it had to do with control of invasive species. This was it was actually pre-construction of the BESS. It's in North Amherst, and the solar field is already in, but there's going to be a new BESS, a new transformer, and the invasive species were going to be controlled by Roundup, which is a glyphosate chemical. And the Concom asked that glyphosate not be used. The contractor was asked if there was a viable alternative, and he said, yes, there is a non-glyphosate material that we can use. So personally, it seems like for number 28, we should be able to ask for a fairly complete list of material. I would like to ask that glyphosate not be used, if that's a submittal, but that may be more of a design guideline topic. Stephanie or Chris, any comments?
I think you can ask for a complete list, and then maybe later on, this is submittal requirements. So later on in the bylaw, you can say no glyphosate is to be used on site.
Can I just ask, does it have to, I agree with doing it that way, Chris. I'm just wondering whether we specify one specific thing or just say no hazardous materials. So I'm just wondering if, I don't know enough about the technical, but is that it for?
Well, I think Pat has submitted something that is clear to me. It essentially says that you shouldn't use, hazardous materials. However, if you're going to, you can only use very small quantities within certain parameters. So it seems like it's a regulated way of using things. And it seemed pretty clear to me. So maybe we should talk about that in conjunction with number 29.
Thank you,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes, and I think we have time to go through the remainder of Chris's memo and then go to the proposal for a hazmat section. I do need to read for your all benefits Mandy's comment on number 28, and referring to this chemical list. She goes, it seems a bit much. Decommissioning is 30 plus years down the road and techniques change. How can anyone know what will be used that far into the future? What does, quote, to be used mean, particularly for operation? I just referenced the fact that they're managing invasive species with the hazardous material essentially. So that is being used, particularly for operation. Does the applicant need to provide a list of all components of the solar panels? Those might not be known, as it's probably proprietary. Where do we define hazardous materials? That's wording is grammatically incorrect. Both is followed by a list of 3 items.
So that's her comment. So is there an edit? I would like, for my benefit, I like to just resolve things. So she has 2 issues here. One is the phrase "and decommissioning," that will we know what the plan is for decommissioning? There are 3. Do we define hazardous materials somewhere? And that's just a matter of putting it in a definition somewhere, right?
Yes.
So if we got rid of the decommissioning phase, would that address her major concern? And is there a concern with deleting that is my question for the group. And so maybe, this is submission pieces, and then maybe it's a plan for how you're going to do decommissioning later. So Pat, I see your hand up. I'm just trying to resolve these as
Yeah,
we have the
no,
comments
sure.
rather than,
Pat,
Yeah, I feel like it should be there. That it's important there. It's saying to be used both in the construction and the operation phase. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to leak all over or do anything like that. I think we need that list so that we can, I don't know. So I think it should stay there.
well, I wasn't going to delete the list. It was the question of the clause and the decommissioning phase.
No,
So I
No,
took
I
that
think
as,
that should be there too, because we don't know what they're going to use. So we're saying, hey, if it's right now hazardous, next year when they're building it, they know it's hazardous, they're not going to use it. Or if they were decommissioning, they wouldn't use it. 10 years down.
I'm
the road,
I'm
you
going
know,
to
it
suggest that we
Wouldn't
do
be
the following.
hazardous if there were changes, so it wouldn't be in the list anymore. I don't know, it just seems, go ahead, Pam.
Okay, perhaps we can have it read, other hazardous materials to be used in both the construction and operation phase, comma, and in the decommissioning phase. It was the grammatical that she was concerned about.
Okay,
Um,
well, let's fix the grammar, but I don't
Yeah.
think we should delete this. Or
I
that
think
section, that section.
I would agree too that it's important, yes, the
hey,
materials.
that's all I'm asking. So it's two different things. There's a list of what you're going to use in operations, and there's potentially a list of when you decommission. They might be different is what the issue is. Then I would be fine with this edit with the comma and the note on hazmat section. We just have to remember that I'd like to just accept it and get rid of the red line. I'm a try to be efficient on going line by line person. And I guess Stephanie and Chris, on decommissioning, that's the question Mandy would you likely know what chemicals you'd have to use in the decommissioning phase?
Chris
think
or
we
Stephanie,
know.
any knowledge of that?
I don't think we know because it's going to be 20 years at least down the road that they would decommission. And it seems like, as far as the solar panels go, decommissioning is a fairly benign activity. But as far as the BESS, it may not be a benign activity. So, they're not going to know now what they would use in 20 years, but they could state that and they could give you a good guess or a good estimate of what they might use.
So this doesn't, if we get the red out of there, then the statement could be, we don't know for sure what we would use, and here's our best guess. Is that how they could comply with this part?
I think so, but in a more formal way.
Yeah, no, I know, I did it.
Yes. So I will suggest that we take out the red notes. It says need a hazmat section to be, and then I had added to state that there would be no hazmat used, period. That's not possible because we have diesel in the excavators and we have, that kind of thing. Is there a way that we could, I think it's covered, but I just want to ask if we are talking about storage of any hazardous materials on site during the construction or operation. Is there a standard? Is there like a state standard, Stephanie, for stormwater management or something that hazardous materials be contained properly per so-and-so's regulation?
So, so if you're talking about, if I can just, I was going to have a comment about the decommissioning phase, and basically that is that just when decommissioning is noted, it's noted just as that, you know, panels will be removed and the site will be returned to its previous conditions. So it's very general. It's not that specific. They're not going to get into what specific chemicals and things they're going to use in a decommissioning plan that's going to happen 20, 30 years out. So I just wanted to say that that's at least what happens with that piece. As far as, you know, I can't say for sure, and with certainty about how the regulation, you know, the state code or state regulations specifically speak to hazardous materials in conjunction with solar development. I would think, you know, as certainly with wetlands, there will be certainly some guidelines by the Conservation Commission that would
Mhm.
restrict any usage in or near wetlands. You know, that's just part of their permitting process.
So it should be covered then by Concom.
Certainly in or near wetlands.
Chris, you were about to say something.
I don't think I was, but
Oh,
I
okay.
would say that
You're-
there are state and federal requirements with regard to use and storage of hazardous materials. So, you know, to some degree, we can rely on that, although as Pam mentioned, Roundup is still allowed to be used. So,
Yes, yes. Right.
It's just regulated in how it's used.
mhm.
So would anybody feel uncomfortable taking out the word and the decommissioning phase if it's so long-term and it seems more benign, that may be something that gets addressed in a decommissioning plan? Or do we strike that line?
I will go along with Kathy's agreement or sense of let's get through this more quickly. And I feel it's fine to take it out, the decommissioning
And
phase.
take the red out and
Yeah,
label.
that's right.
Unless, Chris, were you shaking your head?
I was nodding my head. I agree.
Okay, good.
Okay, so the phrase ends with operation phase. Good.
And we're
Okay.
taking the red line note, the red
Yeah.
wording out as
Yeah.
well.
Yep. Number 29, the recommendation was to delete that. Because there was some redundancy in the ZBA requirements. And my question is, does the ZBA adequately cover the volume of material that's typically moved about on a big solar site?
I think it's worth keeping this in here. The ZBA is not that particular about the information that they ask to be presented to them. One of the things that they're interested in is there more than a certain quantity? And I think they say 2 feet over 5,000 square feet or 5 feet over 2,000 square feet. So they're interested in that, and that trips you over into a special permit. I think it's worth having this here, a calculation of earthwork, listing the amount of soil or rock to be imported or exported. So this seems perfectly reasonable to me to leave this in here.
Right. The next sentence, I would agree. The next sentence, if any materials to be imported, such material should be clean and without contamination by hazardous substances.
That seems reasonable.
That's kind of a design guideline recommendation.
Yeah, and it's not a submittal requirement.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Would that want to come out if we make sure that in the design guidelines we address that? Because it makes sense to not allow asphalt, recycled asphalt as a fill material, for instance.
So you would take it out of the submittal requirement and then put it somewhere else later
Yeah.
on. So bylaw.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. I'm making a note so I don't forget. So that the rest, oh, and then we already talked about deleting the rest of that sentence, like no invasive species, because we can't control the soil that closely. And the Department of Public Works is not going to necessarily review where somebody's bringing material from. And so we were just going to cross off the whole rest of that section and get rid of the red question.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
That's good.
Okay. Number 30, plan for provision of water, including that may be needed for fire protection and suppression. I'm going to start with Mandy's comment. She would like to know what the scope of this is. Did residential developments in North Amherst that aren't on town water need to provide a plan for fire suppression in order to get their building permits and other permits? Concerned that this can be interpreted in a manner that it creates an unreasonable expectation and violates the Dover Amendment.
Well, residential dwellings in areas that don't have water piped to them must rely on their wells to provide water. So they have water on their site. If they're a certain distance from the road, they also need to have a sprinkler system. So they already have a built-in mechanism for fire protection. That's a regulation of the fire department. So it seems reasonable to keep this in here, even though I guess I would question it from the standpoint of many of the fires that are caused by these installations do not respond well to being put out by water. However, if they cause adjacent fires in, the forest, then you would want to have water available to put out that fire. So it's a little confusing to me. Provision of water. Well, where's the water going to come from? I guess it would have to be a truck, a tank truck, to do anything, because I don't think there's water up there. I don't think there's water. Well, I'm thinking of a certain situation that we're all familiar with. But in any event, they make a plan for provision of water. If they don't have water in the street, then they have to bring it in by tank truck. So I think it's a reasonable thing to require as a submittal requirement that the applicant has thought about this.
Yeah, good. Pat and then Kathy.
Yeah, just a quick note, I agree with Chris. Also, in terms of BESS, you normally would think about putting everything out with chemicals. However, initially inside the BESS, if something is starting to smoke or there is water that gets sprayed to cool it and try to stop it before it gets any further. So there needs to be, even with BESS, some access to water. Anyway, but go ahead, Kathy.
I'm fine with keeping it in. I just had a question. We have a big solar installation behind the golf course or adjacent to the golf course. I don't know whether there is water on that. So I'm basically asking Chris, what have we done in the past? I know there was a lot of provision to make sure the fire trucks could get in, that the road was wide enough and they have a key to the gates. So it's just a question of, because they would not have, where it's located, they wouldn't have had a water spigot unless we asked them to have one.
It
Yeah.
does say a plan for provision of water. So that
Yeah.
could mean that they've spoken to the fire department and they've come up with a plan that the fire department could assist whoever is.
And
working
I'm
this out.
fine, I'm fine with the way this is worded. And I think we addressed Mandy's concern is we don't ask it of homes. And the answer is we would. They have to have a well. So
They have to have a plan too.
The sprinkler
Jennifer.
system got, was something that was, anyway.
Yeah, Jennifer.
Yeah, this is really not about, can you hear me?
Yeah. You're
Am I
echoing.
echoing?
It's echoing.
Okay, I think I'm not going to be able to speak during this meeting.
Oh,
if you turn one of them off, the other should work then. Let's try talking right now.
Or turn audio off on your computer.
Turn audio
So you
off on
can-
your computer. And now,
And then
unmute yourself on your phone. You're still muted. You're double muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
yes,
Okay, see, I'm hearing an echo. My computer audio is not working. Anyway, I'm sorry. My question was, are there, it's not particularly about this bylaw, but in current solar installations, if they don't apply, if they're not in compliance with this bylaw, if it's more stringent, are they grandfathered in, or will they have to come up to the standards in this bylaw?
I
Previously
believe they're
installed
grandfathered.
solar? You mean the
grandfather.
ones that are already installed?
Yes.
They do not need to come up to this bylaw if they're already installed.
And
Even
that's
if it's a
true of the-
safety hazard.
Well, this is something that is to be used going forward for new installations. So anything that's already been installed, complied with previous requirements, whatever those
And
were.
Yeah.
Chris, just for clarification, I believe the Shutesbury Road project is grandfathered. In essence, we can't apply this bylaw to that project. Is that true?
Well, the Shutesbury Road project is not grandfathered, but they are taking precautions, and they're submitting a preliminary and then a definitive subdivision plan to freeze the zoning on their site.
Yeah,
So
which
we'll
is,
freeze the zoning for them for 8 years. So it's potentially, equivalent to grandfathering, but it's not the same
Yeah.
thing.
yeah, it's kind of a cheat way to get grandfathered. That's my opinion, not necessarily yours.
It's actually expensive.
yes,
A lot of
yes.
engineering, but whatever.
No, I don't care about that part. I'm
Okay,
curious.
so we all agree on number 30, the wording is fine. It meets the intent and it is not overly prescriptive compared to what we would ask a homeowner to do. Number 31, a mitigation plan for the following items. There was discussion early on, and I see the note from Stephanie back, a year ago or whenever we talked about this, that we could talk about an impact plan. And the question would be, what are we really trying to achieve here? Are we for instance, we already decided we weren't going to have them identify each and every tree bigger than 8 inches. So how do we say, well, how do you mitigate for the loss of 500 trees bigger than 8 inches? This is not a reasonable requirement. Has there been further discussion about impact plans? An impact plan with performance standards. Are any of these appropriate for that?
Well, I have a comment about that, which is that
Okay.
if someone wants to build a subdivision, really build it, they're supposed to submit an impact statement. And that includes all kinds of things like their impact on the property, the number of school children who are going to be there, all kinds of things. So they submit an impact statement, the impact that they're going to have on the town and on that property. And then they make statements about how will they mitigate that impact, or how's that impact not really so bad to begin with. So you could say that you ask them to submit an impact plan and then talk about potential mitigation of those impacts.
That makes sense.
And do we have a sense of what quantifiable performance standards would consist of? Oh, Kathy, I'm sorry, your hand is up.
I like the more general wording, Christian, an impact plan and mitigation. What Stephanie's concern was, I'm looking at this, I think it's written way too generally here, so I think of the kinds of things that it might be impact. If it's on the side of a hill and you take down all the trees, you could get mudsliding onto the property below, or you could get something with water erosion. So but that wouldn't apply if it's flatlands, so it depends, it sort of depends on what the location is, on what the impact would be and what possible mitigation would be. So the larger list here is bigger than I think we would, if I think of health and safety, there are things on this list that aren't quite health and safety, but there are others that might be welfare, like scenic views. So I think it's, the bullets are too detailed, but when you say the impact, Chris, is it usually during the discussion, it's like, what's the impact going to be? And then how are you going to mitigate it? Do you just leave it up to the submitter?
Yeah, and it's usually very general, and it's information provided to the planning board, and I must say they don't talk about it a lot. It's just, it's a requirement, but it's not normally a big point of conversation. I think that part of this about being measurable, if Stephanie can say that I'm wrong about this, but I think that measurability question came up from staff review, like
Mhm.
whether these things are measurable or not. And what I've seen in terms of impact statements is that generally they're well, they're fairly general. They talk in narrative about, well, there might be some noise and vibration during construction, and the kind of noise and vibration might be, jackhammers or various types of equipment coming in and out of the site. And then they'll say, but this would only occur between the hours of X and X, and it wouldn't occur on Sundays. Noise after the fact might be noise from the, what are those things called that make noise on
The transformers.
Transformers starts with an I. Stephanie would know.
Inverters.
Inverters, yes, thank you very much. So that makes noise sometimes. So anyway, just making a statement that this is a potential issue, but here is how our company will impact, it would mitigate that impact. And it doesn't have to be, calculations. It doesn't have to be, a lot of numbers. It really just has to be a narrative about what you're proposing to do. So I think it's not really onerous, and I think the measurability is not necessary.
I'm sorry, Pam, can I just jump in real quick? Because I
Sure.
don't have
Yep.
a raise my hand feature, so I'm not going to be
Yes.
able to do that while I'm sharing.
Just, yeah, go.
I just wanted to say, first, I wanted to remind you that, to Chris's point, that these are attributed to my name, but these are staff comments that we met. It was DPW, planning, inspections, conservation and sustainability all together reviewing the document. And so the comments are group comments from staff. And again, yes, to their point, they felt that mitigation is something very specific. You would measure the impact, then you would quantify that impact. And then when you mitigate for it, you want to make sure that you're attaining the same, level of restoration for what was, for mitigation, or twice as much in the case of wetlands and forests. You would want to make sure there's double the amount. So it is something that you measure. So I think that was why, and to Chris's point, they were leaning towards more impact rather than something very specific. The term mitigation is very specific and implies a specific amount of quantification.
I'm going to do two things. One is, first I'm going to read Mandy's comment. So she's talking about the mitigation plan. These seem excessive. Why is the applicant only asked to describe negative impacts? What about asking for positive impacts to be provided too, such that they need to be considered when discussing any need for mitigation? It all seems designed to just find the negative of these projects. Do we ask any other project subdivisions, for example, to provide mitigation plans for impacts on forest or farmland or scenic views? I believe this should be deleted or at a minimum reworded to be better balanced. And I think the changing it from mitigation plan certainly to impact plan is
Impact
one step.
statement, not plan.
Impact analysis.
Okay, that's the compromise, good compromise.
Impact
you-
analysis. So if I think about some of these items, some of the bullets, impact on forests. I mean, it could be that we go back to one of the earlier submittal requirements, and that was describe roughly how many acres of the following habitat types are, being removed from this property. And it's 20 acres of forest, 40 acres of shrubs, whatever that kind of thing. It certainly would, it's not necessarily something that's going to be mitigated directly, but it could inform what is built into the buffer zone, for instance. And that could be their explanation of how they're going to help mitigate. Pat?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say, but it does seem to me, I'm thinking about Nick saying, if you cut down a certain number of trees, it's actually with rising temperatures. So that in a certain way, that's I'm not saying anything about whether I agree or don't, but that's a positive impact. So I don't think this is, I think Mandy is getting a little carried away about this as only negative impacts. Impact on scenic view. Things like that seem to me be less important than noise and vibration and some of the larger issues. I think that this is important to have, and I like the idea of changing it to impact analysis, specifically because it's something that does happen and peak builders are required to do.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and then Jennifer.
Jennifer had her hand up also.
Yeah, I saw that. Jennifer?
Pat just said what I was going to say, that it is something we require in a subdivision to some extent.
Yeah. Chris?
So I wanted to say that by making this an impact analysis, you give the applicant an opportunity to say, well, I'm having this impact on the forest. Then you could bring in the types of comments that Mr. Shaw brought, I think his name was Shaw, Nick brought in this afternoon about, yes, there's that, but it can be balanced by having solar panels, which can mitigate climate change. And if you have an impact on farmland, you can make the counter argument. It's not necessarily a mitigation, but it could be an explanation of how you're minimizing the impact on farmland and you're preserving agricultural soils. So it's usually part of a narrative where you say, well, these are the things that we're going to impact, and this is how we're going to deal with that. So that's why it's a useful thing. Pam's probably seen the types of environmental impact reports that have to be submitted for fairly large projects to the state, and then the state comes back and says, well, we need more specific information about this, this, and this, and you go and do that.
Yep.
So it starts out kind of allowing the applicant to sort of play both sides or talk about both sides. And I think that's a useful thing when we receive that kind of information. And you could say that it's self-serving, but I don't feel like it's self-serving. I think it's kind of like a complete picture.
Thank you.
Is anybody else hearing, like talking when that doesn't feel like it's an echo of the speaker?
Only with Jennifer.
No, I'm getting it like I'm looking all around. All right, go ahead.
No, there was only when Chris spoke, Pat. I'm not hearing it when you speak.
Yeah, no, I don't hear it now either, but I heard it with Chris and Jen and anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll deal with
That's
it.
okay. That's okay. So I think we're in general agreement and we can move to number 32.
Wait a minute, just a second. Is the
Okay.
impact, are we leaving impact analysis with quantifiable standards for, and then the whole list, all the bullets?
I think no.
So far,
Yeah,
I thought we
I
were
think
getting, we were,
say, I'm sorry for interrupting, but
go
leave
ahead, Chris.
quantifiable in performance standards, in my opinion.
I was going to
I'm
suggest
sorry.
you delete all these bullets. Is that,
No, don't delete the bullets, but delete this section that says with quantifiable performance
That's what I was
standards.
thinking of, getting
Okay,
rid of
yeah,
that, getting rid
yes.
of that wording. And then we have up above talked about how many trees we're taking down. I think we've done, I just want to cross-reference from the things I remember from the other day. We've talked about a picture of how it's going to change the way the site looks. Right? So I'm going through the various things and thinking some of that we've asked for in the visual, the before and after.
Yes.
I
And
don't,
so it just, to the extent it's duplicative, I would delete it. I'm not saying I don't agree with the list. It's just if we've already asked for it above, I wouldn't ask for it here.
it seems to me that there's a difference between a visual image and a statement about the impact, which can be positive or negative, and here's, so I don't agree that we should take things out of this list.
So Pat, you think all of these bullets are still relevant? That's
Yeah,
fine.
I do,
that-
I do.
Okay, I'm okay.
Yeah. Chris,
I think,
I'm sorry.
go ahead,
I
go ahead,
agree.
Pat. I was going to add that some of these like impacts on forest carbon sequestration, to me, that's where you put in your formula and you show what you're taking out and what you're adding, and it's an explanation rather than necessarily, as somebody said, counting the actual trees.
I'm fine with the list. I was just asking
Yep.
about the pieces. That's it.
Yep, that's good.
And then
Good.
should we delete the staff comment attributed to Stephanie because we addressed their concern?
We
We
could
resolved.
say resolved.
Thank you. I'm
That's
trying.
good. Thank you for reminding us to correct the comments.
Well, it
Um,
actually can remove, anyway, go on. It's, yeah. Go
we-
on.
we- I think maybe I'll take it on to go through and just see if some of those comments can be reduced and
No,
removed for next time. That's good.
I think we should only make changes now, to tell you the truth. So it's a remove, but that's
Yeah.
it. Just to avoid seeing new things come in.
Okay, now we get to talk about item number 32. And the original staff comment was delete duplicative. And we did move some of this material to number 20, which is do the visual analysis or the illustration of, let me read it, hold on. A visualization, including perspectives from the abutters, et cetera. And so we have included some of this material already. So for instance, item number 32A, we did include a number 20. Item number 32B, we did include in number 1, which is inventories and submittals. 32C, the visualization and simulation, yes, that got moved up and became number 20. So that paragraph has been incorporated. The next paragraph, which is the number of simulations will depend on anticipated impact, The one sentence that felt important to keep here for me was the next one. It says the visual impact assessment should include consideration of all parts of the project, included associated infrastructure. In the event more than one alternative is being considered, the visual impact of all alternatives should be evaluated by the applicant. That phrase itself seemed like it wanted to be added up at the top where there was a visual impact assessment conducted and submitted. Does anybody follow that? Chris?
I think you could just delete number 32 altogether because we
Yeah.
did have that requirement in number 20, as you said, for visualization. And we have to be careful because of Chapter 40A, Section 3, that makes it, you can't impose unreasonable regulations or conditions on solar installations. And so the visual effect of such an installation is certainly, I think, on the borderline of being reasonable or unreasonable. So we don't want to get into a situation where we're getting really picky about what is this thing going to look like, because we could talk about that forever. So I think the fact that we'd asked for a visualization, a rendering of what this is going to look like in
Mhm.
20. And then, of course, it will come up during the public hearing with the ZBA or the planning board. And members of the public will talk about it. And the board can ask for more information if they feel it's necessary, but I don't think we need this whole section here.
I agree with Chris.
I do too.
Okay,
I would delete
and
all of the yellow and 30, the A's and everything go with 32, correct?
Yes.
yeah, ABC, right. And Mandy's comment is that she agreed that we could delete it. Bye-bye number 32. Okay, don't delete it yet, because we need to keep it, because we want to be able to just out, what do you call it? Strike through the words.
I was only gonna delete the comment that says delete it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm trying to sort of
Thank you.
reduce the number of comments, so.
Yep, appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Number 33, design requirements for agrivoltaics on prime farmland. So I'm gonna read Mandy's. Number 33, references to farmland need to be changed to match the wording used. I think we used prime farmland for consistency. I don't think it's appropriate for a land use permit to mandate that an owner must improve crop yield, as in we don't monitor farms for crop yield, so why would we monitor agrivoltaics for it? Nor should the owner be held to the types of crops identified in the application. If they will be, then types of crops should be deleted, since we need to allow the owner to rotate and or change based on soil health, weather, best farming practices. I would also reword the whole thing, as how it is currently worded is more like design standards, not application submission requirements. And that's actually a good point.
Yeah.
Chris and then Pat.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to have my hand up here.
That's
Oh,
okay, Pat.
oh, I kind of agree with Mandy on this. So somebody tell her so she and I can go celebrate. It does seem excessive to worry about what a person is going to grow. But I have a question. Farmland, do we do, if it is owned by the individual, we don't require it. Are there different standards if I owned a farm and I decided to put solar panels on part of my farm? Well, and is that something that, I don't know, it just seems excessive.
You would still need to
I'm not
submit.
being very sensible here.
You
or-
would still need to obtain a permit.
A permit, right, but I don't see that I would need to prove that I'm improving the soil or whatever.
Chris.
Well, I wanted to say that currently there is a program that the state runs that gives farmers benefits for doing agrivoltaics, and Stephanie may know more about this than I do. And so that program, I think it's part of the SMART program. That program already has requirements for agrivoltaics on farmland, including how you're supposed to treat the soil and how you're supposed to report.
Okay,
So we could delete this. I'm kind of on the fence about it, but maybe Stephanie has some words of wisdom to offer.
I don't know about words of wisdom. But they do have guidance for development of solar on agricultural land, so.
Should we be referencing that?
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
Kathy,
I think it,
Kathy, and
okay, I guess this is submission, so I think we should, this is just what you're gonna do rather than design. I would delete it here from, especially since it's design requirements. If we want to know if it's on prime farmland, which we'll have to define, if we want to know what they plan to do, then it would be, if on prime farmland, what is the plan for photovoltaics? I would reword it that way, not the design of it. And if we want to put this in the bylaw.
Yeah, and prime farmland is in the definitions.
So if
Yeah.
on, I wrote it, if on prime, because it's, if it's not prime farmland, they don't need a plan for agrivoltaics on it. So if on prime farmlands, you know, a plan for the agrivoltaics, I would just reword it to be what the plan is, because we have all these just submission, what's the plan?
what if we said something like, instead of design requirements, we just, number 33 becomes agrivoltaics. That's the topic. And then it could say, the developer, applicant, or landowner shall submit a plan to the PGA that that is in conformance with state standards and guidelines for agrivoltaics, and if
But-
we can reference.
But if they're not doing it, then it's irrelevant. So I just, you know, in other words, if they're not building it on farmland, 33 is irrelevant. I would make it
Right, they're not going to do agrivoltaics probably on forest lands that have been excavated and
okay. I just was trying to make it short, and it
Yeah.
would only apply if they're about to do it on prime farmland. I was trying to make it very restrictive.
Would you put it in a different section? Not
And
have
I-
it middle requirements, but put it later on and it's in
You know,
its own.
if we had a section on prime farmland, it should go there.
Review. Mhm.
So I would delete certainly the yellow part, the very specific.
So
And
So
let's
then,
then
just,
you're deleting 30. You're deleting 33 is, even if you're gonna move it to the farmland section, you don't need 33 anymore.
right, exactly.
but we're just
And it-
striking it. We're just striking it. We're not like,
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying you should strike that, yeah, as well.
And there should be a note that
Minor.
says you're gonna move it to later.
Just move
in
to
the bylaw.
prime farm, if there's a section on it called
Yeah.
prime farmland.
well, agrivoltaics.
Well, it would be, the label of the section would be prime, anyway, never mind.
And we should change that date, right? October 1, 2024.
Amended. Okay, number 34. To the extent that any of the foregoing submittals change substantively over the course of the project review, the applicant shall resubmit documents showing the changes. I think this is a very, very important one to keep. Any objections? Mandy says fine to keep. How's that?
Okay,
We have
Okay.
permission.
Right. We have a blessing. We have a blessing. Okay, so thank you, everybody. And Chris, especially thanks for putting this document together and then helping us walk through it, because that was extremely helpful to look at it as an entity.
Stephanie
Phew.
too. Stephanie
And
was.
Stephanie, yes, thank you. I did not mean to not include her. That said, now that we've gotten through section 1704, I would like to spend a little time talking about Pat's suggested wording, and I think that's also in the packet, if that's possible to pull up and just walk through that. I did get a couple comments from Mandy on Pat's proposal.
Pam, I'm sorry, do you want me to stop sharing this document?
Yes, I think well, yes, to stop sharing this document. Thank you.
Save it,
And-
make a note about where we stopped.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm going to. I'm just stopping sharing right now so that you can
Yep.
focus on the other.
yep.
I have just a question on how the committee works on finding documents, because this document is not posted on the website, but I found it in
Yes, it
SharePoint.
was.
I didn't see
It
it.
was, it was supposed to be, I put both versions, Kathy, should have gone into the public document.
Okay, I don't see the meeting posted is the thing. I see that, I just went to look, but
In
that's
the
okay.
packet. In the packet,
Yeah,
the two things
it's in
that
the
are
packet.
posted are not this. At least they weren't when I looked this afternoon, so that's why I sent a couple of strange emails to people. So the
Okay.
two things that are posted are Pam's comments that happened a couple of weeks ago.
Okay,
and
so
we-
maybe I'm
Mhm.
looking at the wrong place. I just went to council committees, CRC, and this meeting, and I couldn't find it, but I'll try again tomorrow.
Kathy, did you say that the meeting itself is not posted?
Well,
Posted.
I found it I did find it on the calendar.
no, it's on the calendar, Pat. It's on the
Okay.
calendar. I'm
Shoot.
just saying, when I go to,
No, the
council
meeting
committee-
packet is posted. That's,
Okay.
I mean, all the items are in the meeting packet posted on the public site.
Okay,
It's
great.
posted in a strange place. It's posted as the first meeting of 2025 instead of the last meeting of 2025. And I think because the way the
Okay.
title is written makes it
Okay.
fall in that location.
Okay, I don't worry about it, because I'm not used to going to SharePoint to find things.
Oh.
So,
I only go to SharePoint.
Yeah. And I always go to the public packet. It's accessible there.
We must cover all bases.
SharePoint.
Okay,
oh,
let's
Chris,
talk-
you're right. It's, Chris, it is the first meeting in 2025. It comes before January. I got it, found it. Thank you. Okay,
we should talk about consistency of posting.
well,
Okay.
thanks. And so we're,
I could probably do it, or if, let's see.
and what we're about to talk about, I don't see, but I did see in SharePoint, Pat's piece.
Yes. And I am looking to see if I can share it, unless Stephanie has it that she can share. Did that work?
I don't,
Is it,
I don't have it, but you're sharing it now.
okay. All right. So Pat, do you want to talk about this? And can you see it? I don't know if I'm enlarged it enough. I can't tell.
No, it's too small. I mean, I feel like it's fairly straightforward. And I don't think it's, I think it's straightforward. I think we need to have some way to hold any developer responsible. So I don't have a lot.
Well,
to-
let's, okay, so for the audience, if there's nobody listening.
There is
but-
nobody there.
But we could read it quickly. It says, no hazardous waste shall be discharged on the site. That's a very logical statement. Hazardous materials stored, used, or generated on the site shall not exceed the amount of, for very small quantity generator of hazardous waste as defined by Mass Department of Environmental Protection pursuant to blah, blah, blah. and shall meet all requirements of the Department of Environmental Protection, probably that's, I'm guessing, right?
Mhm.
Environmental protection. If hazardous materials, including but not limited to lithium ion storage batteries, are used within the solar electric equipment, then impervious containment areas capable of controlling and containing any release of hazardous materials to the environment and to prevent potential contamination of groundwater are required.
Just, Pam, as you go along, fix, there's one, you read impervious, but it doesn't have the V in it. It needs it.
Imperious. Okay. To mitigate the potential for hazardous materials released from any proposed transformers, only non-toxic biodegradable transformer fluid or dry-cooled transformers are to be used. Pat, I'm going to ask, this obviously came from some guidelines. Can
Right,
you
but I don't
share?
remember where, because it was submitted, I submitted it so many ages ago,
Okay.
so I
Can
apologize.
can I read Mandy's comments?
Sure.
Okay. On this section, bullet 1, regulating use of hazardous materials is a good thing to do. However, as currently worded, I wonder if it's even possible to construct a BES that complies with it. If not, or if it would be too expensive to comply, the wording probably violates the Dover Amendment. The wording on impervious containment areas is a particular concern regarding violation of the Dover Amendment. I don't know why. I'm just saying that. If you have a hazardous material and you are told to contain it for environmental safety purposes, that does not seem like a violation of the Dover Amendment. Sorry.
The only
Next
thing
item.
the only thing I could see, because what I understood in the BES is the cooling happens internally inside the concrete bunker, or whatever you want to call it, is that it will do a mist to try to cool things off. So I don't know if that, I don't know about whether dry cooled transformers are more expensive or something else. I apologize for my lack of knowledge. I didn't think of some of Mandy's things. Chris?
I think we should have somebody who really knows about these installations review this, because I understand that the technology is changing all the time, and whether or not you use water or mist or anything like that is changing all the time. So we really want to make sure that we have this up to date and we have it in enough of a general way so that as technology does change, it can still apply and it doesn't have to be reworded all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Chris or Stephanie, would it be possible to send this particular wording, this paragraph, this 3 paragraphs, to Chris Bascom and ask for some input on this?
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. That would be
And I
great.
will try to get back into more information so I don't sound like an ignorant fool.
Let me just read the rest of Mandy's items then. She says, what is the cost of non-toxic biodegradable transformer fluid? Is it available? Is it used in other transformers in town? Did we require it for other solar projects or transformer installations, etc.? Solar projects shouldn't be held to a different standard than other projects that use the same materials, transformers. Next item, the references to solar installations need to be consistent with definitions and other references in the bylaw. It isn't right now, solar electric equipment in particular. And I think we had systems or something, so that we should check. And then lastly, what does used on site mean for hazardous materials? Wouldn't this restriction, if lithium ion batteries are considered hazardous materials, prevent BESS from being installed, since the amounts for a BESS installation would likely exceed the amount for a very small quantity generator of hazardous waste as referenced. We need to be more specific about what we are referring to when we say used. Otherwise, the whole thing likely violates the Dover Amendment. So I will send her document. I will send it to all of you, and I will also send it to Stephanie and Chris so that we have it in writing. And Chris and Stephanie, as you talk to Chris Bascom, that would be probably helpful for him to see these comments as well.
Yeah, Pam, can you also make sure that I have this this section, this draft of sections?
Yes, yep,
15,
yep.
whatever.
Yeah.
Thank
Can we go back to the very first sentence? It says, shall not exceed the amount for of. How do we want to write that? The amount of, the word for is perhaps unnecessary.
You know, right now, since the content is of concern, I wouldn't
Oh, yeah,
edit.
yeah,
I would
okay.
forget editing for precise wording.
Thank you. That's a good point. Yep, thank you.
I mean, yes, but I think it can probably be tightened up when we understand what we're tightening.
Very
this-
good, thank you.
And Pat, this is being proposed to drop in a general section called hazardous waste.
Yes, it is.
And there would be also something else on best, right?
Yes.
You know, so just
We-
in terms of the structure of this gets dropped in somewhere that's logical, right?
Yes,
Thanks.
hopefully.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I hope we'll be, no, just in terms of, you might want to make it come after BESS to be more general, or this is general enough that it also refers to something else beyond storage things. So I'm just thinking the structure. So when I look at the structure, figuring out where it might go, but we
You know,
don't decide that right now.
Yeah, and just saying, like PFAS is
Mhm.
used on solar panels and stuff. And we're now finding that that's quite a hazardous material. But we're not limiting that, but there are panels that are being made now without PFAS. And they're actually cheaper and they last longer. So we actually might be doing some developers a favor by having some limits on what they can do.
Right, and so that's why I think it's important to take a look at this, because, you know, you
Yeah.
might want to say, to the extent possible, avoid it altogether, if there's an
Yeah,
alternative.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
that might be a sentence. The mitigation might be is, if there's a choice that doesn't have it, that's a better
Then
choice.
if you can do, yeah.
But okay, so I will think of this as, it will be dropped in where it makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, exactly. And so I have just unshared, is that right? Stop the share. Did that work? Yes, okay. I think this is a good point to just wrap up solar for today. We're gonna switch over to talking about ZBA and planning board. If nobody is,
I have one question I'd like to ask, but I know which two I was going to look at. I wanted to look at existing solar bylaws where they're already there or a model. And the two I had that were recommended to me, one was Cape Cod Commission, which gives a model. And then I saw that Petersham actually has one on the books. And I don't need it right now, Chris, but Chris and Stephanie, if there's any particular one you think, this is me catching up. Is there any particular one you think would be good? I have the bandwidth to read about 3. And since I've noticed that they use each other, so I'm just saying to look at themes and differences. And I'm looking at it more for structure as well as content as I try to look at what we've got. So that's just a request for Kathy catching up. So the ones I already have is, I already downloaded Petersham and the Cape Cod Commission. If there is another I should look at, just let me know.
There's
Thank
one from Ware. I know
Where?
that. from
Okay,
Ware, and our former planner, Rob Wachilla, helped to write it a couple of years ago. So Ware
Okay.
has the regular bylaw, and I think they have a BESS section as well.
okay. That's perfect. I just want to, look at the two as I
Yeah.
think of, when we're striving at some point for a clean version, just trying to look at how the others have structured it. And I know we're putting batteries in, which others hadn't necessarily done, and we're gonna have a separate battery. So that's it. That's perfect. You gave me what I need. Thank you.
And before we get off the topic wholly, Chris, at some point you had mentioned that perhaps a table of dimensional standards might be handy, and that it might be easier to reference than a text, whatever text format. Is that something that you had given any more thought to?
No, I haven't worked on it, but I know that that's something that you were asking for, and Mandy was specifically asking for that. So I will look into that. There were a number of other things that we talked about, various definitions that we said we would do, and reference to the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. I think Stephanie got some language back from Aaron about that, and a couple of other things. So I do recognize that we have some holes that we need to plug here. So I can work on that dimensional table, and also the table of use categories. So we're going to have battery, we're going to have battery storage, and we're also going to have solar arrays. So we need to put those into the use category table
Right,
and
right.
assign them the type of permitting that they'll need to have.
Wonderful. That's terrific. Yes. Still lots of loose ends, but getting there. I think that was the thing I needed to remember to ask about, was the dimensional table. So next round, which will be, our next meeting is March 27. We might get some feedback on this hazmat section. That would be terrific. But in any case, we will start in earnest on the design standards and hopefully move on from there. But that would be the focus, would be design standards. Okay. Next agenda. Any other thing you want to add about solar before we move into planning board and ZBA selection process?
You don't need Stephanie and me anymore, is that correct?
No, you don't. We don't. We would love to have you stay with us, but we think you have better things to do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, I'm going to try sharing again. We'll see what comes up. Can you see it? It's the planning board vacancy announcement. And hopefully you've all read it. Anything that you would like to add? Shall I read it out loud, or what's the easiest way to just go through it? Oh, I'll share what Mandy wrote to me. How's that? It's a good
Okay.
place to start. Good place to start. Vacancy notices. Terms do not begin immediately. This was an old thing. They began on July 1. I request both vacancy notices be amended to reflect this. And I will just double check. Oops. This doesn't even mention it. Oh, right
It
here,
does.
right here, right
Yeah.
here.
Right there.
Terms
Yeah.
would begin, terms
July
would begin
1st.
on July 1, 2025. Okay, so that's corrected. And I think I did the ZBA one. Let's see. The planning should be updated, the documentation should be updated prior to the posting and your notes removed. That's being done. And then the sentence about confirming interest of those that have filled out prior CAFs is not quite in alignment with current policy, although it is in alignment with your proposed changes to the policy. However, until those changes are adopted, the notice should remain in alignment with current policy. So the notices should be revised to add a reference regarding that they will be contacted and, if still interested, requested to complete another CAF. So let's see if I got this right. Those currently serving on the board and whose term is ending, and those who have submitted a CAF within the past 2 years expressing interest in serving, will be contacted to confirm your continued interest. If still interested, you will be asked to complete a new CAF. Does that look like I have completed this assignment properly? All in favor,
yes.
all in favor say yes.
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 Okay, so is the planning board bulletin notice okay for me to send to Athena? Any
Do we have to
objection?
vote?
I don't think so,
No,
not on this.
no,
I would
if-
say
if-
yes.
If we've addressed the close reading, we're done.
Yeah, good. Okay, that one's done. So PB is okay. I'm making a note. PB, okay as amended. Close. Okay, here is now can you see this?
You haven't shared it yet.
Oh, sorry. It would be ZBA. Can you see that?
Yep.
But not very. Tell me when it's big enough. Okay, so in this case, the same applied. Terms do not begin immediately. They begin on July 1, 2025. So all in agreement? We'll get rid of that. Okay, I'll get rid of it. And then again, that they will be contacted, those who are currently serving on the board and whose term is ending, and those who have submitted a CAF within the past 2 years expressing interest in serving will be contacted to confirm your continued interest. If still interested, you will be asked to complete a new CAF. So that's the wording that I was requested to put in. And so I have struck my old wording and am happy to let it go.
Is that a strike through or is that a delete?
It was a strike through.
Okay, so just delete it so I can read it. Yeah.
Okay. Reject format change. Accept format change. How come it didn't?
Just delete it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
just,
tried. It's on track changes and I don't know how to do that in accept deletion. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to accept this deletion as well. Okay. So those are both cleaned up. Her last comment was that these handouts for more information on the zoning board or on the planning board, I have to refer them to a document. You're going to see that document next, but we have to get it to Athena to be posted in the right place so that anybody getting this notice can go find it. I'm going to accept this if nobody has a problem accepting the new wording. Okay. Any other concerns? Anybody have objections to sending this to Athena as necessary? Okay.
Looks good.
And Pam, you're going to make sure that Athena is posting this cross-reference document that they're supposed to read, right?
Yes, but
Okay.
we have to approve it first before I can send it to her.
We have to approve the description of what the zoning board of appeals is?
No, actually you don't. It's just no, you do not. Nobody's ever had to do that before. I don't think it should be. It's just that I can't reference it here when it hasn't been updated, so it'll get updated. Good point. Stop share.
Yeah, because I think it's more important to get it get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't bring it back.
Right. Okay. So let's see if there's anything else. Those are the two bulletin board announcements. We have, that's it. Oh, next meeting, I would like to spend I just like to get this stuff done before we get into the throes of, interviewing and so forth. So next, I'm jumping ahead to next agenda preview. Does anybody have any issue with going through the interview questions and just getting those taken care of? Okay. And I wanted to let you know that the guidance for selection guidance that comes to us incorporates responses from the chair of the ZBA and the chair of the planning board. The document in our packet has the current ZBA update, and I'm waiting for feedback from the planning board chair to update the planning board document. So that's in the works as well. So we'll have interview questions and we'll try to do that on March 27. Great. Let's see, I jumped ahead a little bit. We have 2 minutes to approve, one of which was really bizarre. Like didn't have any information in it. Do we want
Athena
to
has
see? Do
her
I have to?
hand up.
Oh, hi, Athena.
Hi, I added those two drafts and then after I looked at them, it seems they were, I checked with our recorder who's doing the minutes for CRC and they were a previous draft and she hasn't gotten me the final ones yet. So I would suggest not approving those and I apologize about that.
Oh, great. Okay, I was a little worried if I was supposed to go back and fill in the dates and times. And
blanks.
good, thank you. That's perfect. So we are not going to do meeting minutes today. That's fine. Moving on, next agenda preview, solar bylaw, and that would be section 1705, etc. Pat.
No, I just wondered if without Mandy here, we can't really do this, but so maybe putting it on the next agenda about making the meeting time, and we'd have to check with Athena
Oh, yeah.
and staff, meeting time from 3:30 to
Thank you.
whatever, 5:30 instead of 4 to 6. And if we
Okay,
can't,
so-
I'll be fine. I won't, that'll be fine, but I'd like that change if we could do it.
I don't know if Kathy or Jennifer heard the conversation early at the beginning of the meeting.
I'm just responding to that. I came in at the tail, that would be fine with me. I'm, 3 o'clock's fine with me too. So, but basically the idea of doing
Free
it
all
earlier.
Thursday afternoon, so.
What?
Okay,
Yeah,
Thursday afternoons, I'm free, so.
yeah, 3 to 5 would be fine too. I
Yeah,
can
so
I just,
eat
if we,
before I go off to the next thing.
that would be
Yes.
great. So I've just.
But I think we need to wait for Mandy.
So I had one other, just to give you a heads up, I will not be here for the first meeting in April, which is April 10th.
Yep.
I'm physically in a place I won't be in, so by the time I get back, I will look at whatever you've done with the solar bylaw, but I will really have committed to reading the others as well as the first, to try to figure out. I'm also trying to take a step back and just look at the structure of what's emerging.
And
And
I
it's
went
hard
back
for me to do it when I don't know what pieces are coming. So that was why I asked on hazardous is going to come into it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I went back in my notes, the hazardous waste came from the Cape Cod model
Yeah.
bylaw, so I want to check Petersham and Ware to see, because the model bylaw is one thing, and also check Cape Cod's actual bylaw.
Yeah.
So,
And so it's just helpful because they worked
yeah,
out, they
yeah,
worked out the kinks of a flow.
yeah,
yeah,
And
they really did.
And they're sometimes missing whole elements, but at least you can see the structure. And
Yeah.
then the other thing I think, and it's what Mandy has been flagging. But since the state more detailed pieces on what is health, safety kinds of stuff isn't yet written, the more we can be super tight on this, ours can be a model for the state. So that's what,
Yeah, I agree.
so I'm looking at it
Yeah.
that way, that we think this one won't fly, but this probably will in the way
Right,
we
exactly.
phrased
Yeah,
it.
and I spoke with Michael DiChiara, who was one of the primary people in Shutesbury working on theirs, and a great deal of their bylaw was actually accepted. The thing that got them and triggered a negative response had to do with design elements and stuff. So but we have, what he said was, we really have the right to require reports and things, and I don't want those to be excessive. I want us to have solar developments.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
But
and
I
that's,
also want particularly around forests that we need to be very careful how we do it. So I'm not even opposed to completely doing it, but how do we do it and do it
right,
well?
no, I agree. And, the term that's the toughest is welfare, but health and safety are, what do we mean by that?
Right,
Water pollution, unsafe things. So that's why I asked Will. So I will look at the final Cape Cod one, not just the model where, and Pat, if you have Shutesbury, I'll find it. It's helpful for me to see one that made it, that is kind of useful, but.
Yeah, and Shutesbury didn't make it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I'm good with 3.
Yes, Cape
That's-
Cod is
that's my
supposed to be
limit
very
too.
good.
Yeah.
The other thing is, one of the things people keep conflating the Shutesbury Road project with all large-scale solar development. And so, but that site is really access and everything else. And in terms of safety, water and contamination is critical.
Yeah.
It's very possible that it would do horrible damage to people's homes and in that site, so it isn't, as I said before, I'm not completely opposed to even cutting down some forests, but we need limits and we need easy access and safe access, which we don't have there. And whether we can stop that project or change parameters of it, I don't know, because it is basically grandfathered. So,
Well, no, it has not gone, it has gone through some of the permitting.
yeah, but
So ZBA can require
yeah,
whatever,
we can, yeah,
what it
but
feels is important.
yeah.
So
No, and
Anyway,
and certainly Conservation Commission can come in with, it's a poster child for sites that are potentially hazardous to health, to health and
Yeah.
safety.
So it hasn't been permitted yet, so, yeah.
So.
So
and-
we should remind that the Conservation Commission actually voted to not accept one of their haul roads. The haul road went through the 100-foot buffer of 2 different wetlands and it was denied. So that was a connection from one portion of the site to a very large extension of solar field that was being proposed, and that was denied by the Concom. So that's where it sits right now.
thank you for that update. I did not know
Okay,
that.
we need to get Athena back where she needs to be. So let's keep going. Let's see. So next agenda, solar bylaw, interview questions, a change of meeting time proposal. I have no announcements, nothing anticipated, and I'm ready to adjourn.
Yay!
Okay. I'm gonna go,
And
I'm
I'm
gonna go around.
sorry, I couldn't be more participatory. The town sent everyone a notice to have their water meters checked. So they came and found a hole in ours, and so during this meeting also, they were banging away on the new pipe. So
Oh, Dan, I'm sorry.
this meeting was not meant to be for me.
It's not a good meeting. Okay.
Anyway, but you all
I
had a good
made-
meeting.
I made the motion. Who seconds it?
I
Second,
second it. Oh, Jen
let's go
seconds
ahead.
it.
good second.
Jen seconds. Jennifer,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Pam's a yes. Meeting is adjourned at.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
This
5:39.
committee is getting to be more fun. I like it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye.